Hi, this is Ted Beener with the National Weather Service in Seattle, and this is an update on the latest winter weather outlook and a peek for the rest of 2016. First, let's take a look at what's ahead for the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. As you probably feel outside right now, we've got a flow of cooler, drier air coming from the interior British Columbia through the Fraser River Canyon. The winds, particularly up in the north interior of western Washington, are expected to ease by tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning. And precipitation here this morning will be ending from the north, along with some clearing. Looking ahead for Wednesday all the way through the holiday weekend, it will be cool and dry. In fact, low temperatures will be dropping down to the mid-20s to the mid-30s, gradually warming into the 30s by the time we get to the end of the weekend. High temperatures also will be below average, with highs in the upper 30s to mid-40s, moderating to some degree into the 40s by Sunday. No weather impacts are expected throughout the holiday weekend for those that are traveling to and from, with perhaps the exception of some icy spots during the overnight and morning hours. The next threat of any precipitation is expected next week. Now let's take a look at the latest winter season outlook for the Pacific Northwest. This is brought to you by the National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Center. First, a quick review on what is El Nino versus La Nina. El Nino is when sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific tropical waters, the waters west of Peru, are warmer than average. In contrast, for La Nina, those waters are cooler than average, and in between, sea surface temperatures close to average, those are called neutral conditions. For those who want more information on El Nino, here is a website link that has an article that is entitled El Nino in a Nutshell. As a result of those warm waters west of Peru, the jet stream tends to be across the southern tier of North America, across the U.S., during an El Nino winter season. That's depicted here on the left side, and some welcome rain coming to the desert southwest across Texas, the Gulf Coast, and into the southeast. In contrast, La Nina, the jet stream spends a lot more time at our latitude here in the Pacific Northwest, bringing us a string of weather systems and much more active weather than we would typically get during an El Nino year. Speaking of that, for La Nina, cooler temperatures are usually associated with La Nina here in the Pacific Northwest, along with wetter than average conditions. In contrast with El Nino, we have a strong correlation for warmer than average temperatures. No real strong correlation with precipitation. If you look at the long-term history, maybe about 95% of what we normally would get during the winter season. Looking at the history of El Nino and La Nina, everything in the red here are El Ninos going back to 1950, and La Ninas are in the blues, and I've highlighted some 6 of the warm El Nino years, including the 2 warmest, 1982 and 83, as well as 97 and 98. This year's El Nino is up there in probably the top 3, but won't exceed the other 2. At least that's what it looks like right now. There's also the definition of what is a weak, a moderate, and a strong El Nino, as well as La Nina. Speaking of that, here is a pie chart that kind of shows that for El Nino, La Nina, and neutral conditions, they divide up roughly about a third each. And for really strong or warm El Ninos, like this winter, less than 10% of the time does it occur. This chart here is depicting a couple of things. Number one, during the early 1980s, NOAA put a suite of buoys from Peru all the way across to the western Pacific to kind of monitor this El Nino southern oscillation conditions. And those that are involved in climate studies kind of broke up the areas from west of Peru all the way across the date line into this Niño 1, 2, 3, and 4 geographic areas, and studies have shown that the hybrid Niño 3.4 has the strongest correlation to our winter weather here in North America. On the right-hand side are the sea surface temperature anomalies, or difference from normal, going back to last fall when we had a weak El Nino. And starting in the spring, you can see temperatures ramped up to where we are now, pretty close to 3 degrees Celsius above average, quite warm, and it's leveling off at this particular point. This chart here is showing the actual observed sea surface temperatures over the week last week, and the observed sea surface temperature anomalies, clearly depicted here in shades of yellow and orange west of Peru. And here's an animation showing the evolution of those warmer than average sea surface temperatures off the west coast of Peru out across the eastern Pacific over roughly since the latter part of the summer. So El Nino conditions are in place, quite warm, and showing signs of leveling off. We're expecting El Nino conditions to continue through this winter. And as a result, the jet stream, which has spent a lot of time at our latitude just here in the last 3 or 4 weeks with lots of weather, wind, rain, flooding, etc., look for the jet stream to sag south into California once the El Nino weather pattern is fully established. That'll probably occur anywhere from roughly mid-December into pretty close to the first of the year. Looking at our 3 big weather events that we get during our winter seasons, floods, wind, and lowland snow events, this is the ranking for neutral, La Nina, and El Nino. You will notice that El Nino ranks last or third in each of them. That doesn't mean we don't get these kinds of events, and we've already experienced some wind and some flooding so far this fall season, but they do tend to be less frequent during El Nino seasons as opposed to neutral and La Nina winters. This chart here is showing the forecast process from now all the way through the seasonal outlooks. The National Weather Service forecast offices, such as the one here in Seattle, handle from now out through day 7. And then the Climate Prediction Center, CPC, handles day 8 all the way through the seasonal outlooks. And I highlighted a gap here between the 8 to 14 day outlook and the monthly forecast, and that is a new week 3 and week 4 outlook. This one here is from roughly early December through mid-December and shows increased odds on warmer than average temperatures here in western Washington. And on the precipitation side, the right-hand side, equal chances. That's what the EC stands for. So equal chances of above, near, or below average precipitation during this 2-week period in December. Looking ahead for the rest of December, this is the seasonal outlook for the month of December. And again, increased odds on warmer than average temperatures here in the Pacific Northwest and equal chances of near, above, or below average precipitation during the entire month of December. Looking ahead for the rest of the winter, this is January through March, temperatures are expected to be really strong odds on above average temperatures for the entire 90-day period, January through March. Doesn't mean you won't have a cool period once in a while through there, but when you look at the overall average for the 3 months, really good odds on above average temperatures for January, February, and March. For precipitation on the right-hand side, the Climate Prediction Center has tipped the odds to below average precipitation for January, February, and so in summary, El Nino is here. It's going to be with us through this winter. Temperatures on average will be warmer than average through the entire winter season. Precipitation starting pretty close to average and maybe tipping a little bit below as we get on further into winter. And what does this mean for our mountain snowpack? I'll highlight this a little bit more thoroughly here in just a moment. But on average, El Nino winter seasons tend to bring a below average mountain snowpack. We clearly saw that last year. And it also is in part a result of an above average higher snow level as a result of the warmer conditions. I'll come back to this topic here in a moment. On the event scale, having major wind, flood, or lowland snow events along with some cold weather outbreaks, that they're just less likely during an El Nino winter season. And if we're going to have active weather, it usually occurs in the fall rather than in the January, February, March time frame. And again, that's a result of where that jet stream location is, and we've already experienced that here this fall. Speaking of the mountain snowpack, let's focus on that a little bit. April 1st is usually the peak of the mountain snowpack. And during El Nino years, they're still expected to be a below average mountain snowpack, thanks in part to the warmer temperatures and the average snow level being higher than it normally would be. However, when you look at what this year's mountain snowpack is going to be compared to last year's terrible or meager mountain snowpack, really good odds that it should be much better than it was last year. Give you an illustration of that, Snoqualmie Pass had just a little over 100 inches of snow through the entire winter season last year, just terrible. A typical El Nino year has somewhere around 200 to 300 inches of snow at Snoqualmie Pass. So I don't know about you, but I'll take double or triple what we had last year, and we'll be in much better shape. This is our new drought webpage. So for those who are interested in how our drought situation is, and including precipitation maps, forecasts, and outlooks, current conditions, it is off the National Weather Service's webpage at weather.gov/Seattle on the local hydro link. And here is the link for the entire direct link to that particular new drought webpage. So if you're interested in that, that's a great one-stop shopping location. Now let's look ahead. This particular chart here shows that all the guidance is showing that the warm sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific tropical waters are going to cool, and cool dramatically. So El Nino is quite likely going to end, and in fact by the time we get to next fall and winter, we'll either be in neutral or perhaps even La Niña conditions. So looking at the Climate Prediction Center's outlooks for this coming spring, April through June, increased odds on warmer than average temperatures, and again equal chances on near, above, or below average precipitation for the months of April, May, and June. Heading into next summer for July through September, increased odds on warmer than average temperatures through the whole entire western U.S. Precipitation-wise, equal chances. But keep in mind, July, August, September tend to be our driest time of the year anyway. So warmer than average conditions is probably the driving force here for this coming summer. And then a peek ahead for next fall. Clearly the El Nino pattern is over, and we have equal chances on near, above, or below average temperatures for October, November, December here in the Pacific Northwest. And precipitation-wise, they've tipped the odds on above average precipitation for this coming fall. Here is a list of resources, including our website at weather.gov/Seattle. For those of you with smartphones, there is a public mobile application that you can use at mobile.weather.gov. You can tailor it for your particular location. And also our All Hazards No Weather Radio Network, which is a key element of the Emergency Alert System, or EAS. These are great resources that you can have, that you can use at home, on the road, at work, wherever you may be. In addition, if you ever have questions, we're available here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including this coming holiday weekend, at the phone number you see listed here. Again, I'm Ted Biener with the National Weather Service in Seattle. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday weekend.